The Seattle Mariners have been linked to these big names. Let's talk about it. So yesterday was actually a pretty hectic day in the Seattle Mariners world because there's been a few rumors that the Seattle Mariners have been talking to a few specific players that have not been on a lot of Mariners fans' radar. And there's definitely been some interesting offers in return for some players the Seattle Mariners were after, so let's talk about that in this video. So this video is going to be a little bit more casual and more or less just kind of my opinion and going over some of the things that we've seen all over the Mariners world yesterday. So as we know, the Seattle Mariners are most likely not going to be targeting a second baseman this offseason after Ken Rosenthal said that Ryan Bliss and Dylan Moore will most likely man the position until Cole Young is probably ready to come up later in the season. Now to start off with news that most of you have probably seen, and that is the Alec Bohm discussions with the Philadelphia Phillies. In an article written about it, it says in initial trade talks between the two clubs, the Phillies asked for one of the Mariners' top pitchers in Logan Gilbert or George Kirby in exchange for Bohm, a source with knowledge of the discussion said. So definitely not a hot start to trade discussions when the Phillies are already asking for one of our top pitchers in exchange for Alec Bohm. I think that is an absolute ridiculous asking price from the Phillies, but again, what do you expect if you're the Seattle Mariners? You have some of the best starting pitchers in Major League Baseball who are young and have tons of years of club control, so of course teams are going to shoot their shot and ask. Teams definitely aren't going to make it easy when you have a farm system that is stacked as well as the best starting five in all of baseball. So I would say as of now, those conversations are most likely stalled unless, later down the line the Phillies really can't get rid of Bohm. Maybe the Mariners come back to him and offer him a prospect deal or some MLB ready players and some prospects. Because there is absolutely no way that the Seattle Mariners are giving up Logan Gilbert or George Kirby in exchange for 2 years of Alec Bohm. Now this next topic is going to be a little bit about the Chicago Cubs, and as we know that Nico Hoerner is most likely going to be the one that gets traded if he were to even get traded this offseason in the first place, but there are some rumors that they really don't want to get rid of him unless they're getting MLB talent in return. The Cubs are very much like the Seattle Mariners. They have one of the top farm systems in all of baseball, so prospects really don't interest them that much. Yesterday there was a lot of rumors between a possible 3-team trade between the Chicago White Sox, Chicago Cubs, and the Seattle Mariners. The first I saw of this was by Jacob Zanola, who is big in the Cubs community, so he posted that several sources have indicated that the Chicago Cubs are currently in active negotiations with the Chicago White Sox and Seattle Mariners on a potential 3-team trade. Nothing is imminent, but the winter meetings in Dallas could push it across the finish line. As well as Ty from the Locked On Mariners podcast said, I can confidently say the Mariners, White Sox, and Cubs talked about a 3-team deal based on what I've heard and who I've talked to. But he did also say that reports out of Chicago seem to indicate it did fell through. So kind of going along with this, Jacob also did post that his assumption is that the Southpaw Garrett Crochet would head to Chicago, with Nico Hoerner to Seattle and prospects to return for the White Sox. He said other players would most likely be involved, but that is just a vague idea of what the framework would look like. So as someone hearing this for the first time, I am extremely intrigued by this possible 3-team deal. As we know, 3-team trades, we've been talking about it all offseason, are extremely hard to pull off. But if the Mariners end up getting Nico Hoerner out of it and all they have to give up is some prospects, I will absolutely be in for this. I'm assuming they may have to get rid of one major league player. Who that may be, I don't know, but I'm assuming somewhere along this deal they will have to give up a MLB ready player. Because as I said, the Chicago Cubs are not really interested in getting guys that are just prospects. They want MLB ready talent. But that is something that was pretty big in the Mariners world yesterday and something that is definitely very intriguing to hear, and hopefully that does pick up at the winter meetings and the Mariners can possibly get Nico Hoerner out of it. But what's so confusing to me is why are they discussing about keeping second base internally but then still trying to make trades for Nico Hoerner? He's an outstanding defensive player, which we talked about in one of my previous videos, so I'm sure he could probably move over to third base if he really wanted to, but I don't know if that's something that's interesting to him. And moving on to the next rumor, which of course still involves the Chicago Cubs, is MLB Bruce Levine said the Seattle Mariners are amongst the few teams who have recently checked in with the Cubs about Cody Bellinger. The Yankees and the Astros are also amongst the 2 other teams that have also checked in about Cody. Now, I can't say Cody Bellinger was on my bingo card for the Seattle Mariners this offseason because one, his salary is a lot for the Seattle Mariners, or at least in their mind, as well as he is mainly an outfielder. Last year, he played in 49 games in right field, 48 in center, 24 at DH, and 22 at first base. So my first initial reaction is that they are most likely, if they were to even get Cody Bellinger in the first place, is that he would be primary first baseman. But for Cody's contract next year, he's about to make almost $27 million, which is a little bit short of, but still, that is a lot of money for the Seattle Mariners to fork out unless, there's some kind of deal involved where they're dumping some salary in order to take on Cody's. I did also see somewhere that the Cubs aren't really interested in shedding his salary. They really just want to get rid of it fully if they are going to trade him. But one thing I did see, which is a little bit interesting, is that the Cubs don't really want to pay any of his salary. If they are going to get rid of him, they want the team, whoever they trade him to pay all of his salary. Now, Cody Bellinger is definitely a very intriguing player. We had talked about him a little bit last offseason and whether the Mariners should really go after him because I believe he was a free agent, if I'm not mistaken, last offseason until the Cubs signed him again. again. But my biggest problem with Cody Bellinger is just the inconsistency. Since the 2021 season, here are his WAR splits. In 2021, he had a -1 WAR. In 2022, he had a 1.5 WAR. In 2023, he had a 4.4 WAR. And then last season, he had a 2.2 WAR. So in my opinion, for a guy making $27 million a year, he needs to be much more consistent than that. But let's go through a few more of his stats since 2021 to kind of get an idea of just how inconsistent he can be. In terms of batting average, 165, 210, 307, 266. In terms of strikeout percentage, 26.9, 27.3, 15.6, 15.6. In terms of home runs, 10, 19, 26, 18. In terms of RBIs, 36, 68, 97, 78. So as you can tell, he has had some very inconsistent years. Even in terms of his WRC plus, 47, 83, 136, and 109. So this is just very concerning, especially for a hitter coming from the NL over to Seattle. Fangraphs has his projections in 2025 to be 20 home runs, 75 RBIs, a 258 batting average, 109 WRC plus, and a 2.2 WAR again. So if you told me that our first baseman put up those numbers next year, I would not complain, but that also just, like I said, really concerns me, the amount of money that he is making, as well as the fact that he is just so inconsistent. But I am glad to see the Mariners going after some of the guys that will definitely move the needle going into the 2025 season. It seems like there is a high likelihood of the Chicago Cubs and Seattle Mariners making a trade at some point this offseason, which is definitely something I would not complain about, especially if they solve some of the infield issues that they have. But I just want to make this video to give you guys a little bit of an update of where the Mariners have been rumored to be this offseason and some potential players that can go out and make trades for. Please let me know which of these players you'd be most intrigued by the Mariners getting. Otherwise, I hope you guys did enjoy the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.